First off, everyone needs to listen to your podcast. I think you guys are probably my most favorite industry podcast out there because you guys really teach actors how to actually be entrepreneurs, how to actually market themselves. So I also do feel like every actor should think of themselves as a business person.
Do we have any more reviews? No.
I don't think so.
Nobody cares.
Don't.
What?
Don't want me using this camera.
Oh God!
I was shameless about, and it's funny. Every time I start to get a cold sore and I put some of the stuff on. You go, you're funny about that, about like things on people's faces.
When have I ever called out what when you've had cold sore cream or when you've had a cold sore?
No, it's actually quite sweet. It's actually I'm not mad at it because you're actually just sort of trying to be. You're just sort of like being like, oh, you're being polite.
Well, it's funny, right? Because you're saying that when you have cream on your face, cold sore cream on your face, I'm like, you got something on your face, and you're like, I know, I have something on my face. That's the whole fucking point.
Well, kind of, but exactly.
Well, then I don't know what cold. Well, that's the thing. Then I just don't know what. When I said that, and
you would think it was cream cheese.
Yes, right. That's exactly.
I'm serious.
What I would think. I would think it was cream cheese.
I don't mean in a rude way. I'm saying like, and listen, I get it, but here's what it was making me think about. If you are not someone who you know how there are subsets of people in the world who get your kind of weird niche thing. So there's many examples of this, but for me. When I meet other people who either have narcissistic parents or are have cold sores, it's like a special grouping. And people who get cold sores understand the action you have to go into. Like I've stopped this, meaning because this started 15 minutes ago, I've now taken lysine, I've taken this special it's herpes simplex B medicine. I forget Clavir. It's like the heavy duty stuff, and use Abreva. And for those listening, they know, oh, he's got it. But you have to act so quickly,
and you feel it coming. Is that how it goes?
Feel it coming.
It's funny. Yeah, I never get caught. I don't think I have herpes. Doesn't everybody have herpes or something? Everybody has herpes, but I think a lot of people have herpes, but it doesn't. Like flare up, I think often, but I think like 75% of adults over 30 have herpes or something like that.
Well, I mean, I think then obviously there's various forms of. I again have this.
Well, there's genital.
Exactly, and I have one called herpes simplex B, which I've had forever. But let me just tell you, as a kid, the reason why this matters is before I knew how to.
When you say you're a kid, you mean like
6, 7.
I thought you only get herpes from kissing.
My dad
sucking dick.
My dad. No, apparently my dad used to kiss me when I was a little baby, and he had some cold sores. And so,
oh, really?
So I did.
Fascinating.
Get cold sores.
Thanks, Dad.
Exactly for it all. But
that's your legacy.
So I'm quite but I've got it under control. Like I'll have this squashed in 24 hours.
Fascinating. So you feel it coming on and you just foop, 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 foop.
I actually carry it with me. I have been. I'm at the end of a cold, meaning it's only the reason why cold was actually quite helpful for me. LOL, this being the whole beginning of the episode, is they tell me when I'm immunocompromised. It's
like your version of a period or something. It's like
sure.
It's like your cycles, like your the moon or something.
It just can tell me like if I feel cold sore, and even if I haven't feeling a little under the weather, it's like, oh, I got to be careful. Do you know?
Wow. What's that like? I have no idea what it's like to be like that in tuned with your body, where you're like, oh, I'm sensing something that may happen, or like, oh, I can tell because when this happens, it leads to this thing in my, or like, when women in their cycles, I'm just like, what's it like to like be that? I feel like my body's just like a big greasy sausage I live in. That's what it feels like. It just doesn't feel like anything. It just feels I have no sense of like I wake up and I'm like, fuck. I remember I got like for some reason last year it was wild. I got an infection. I don't even know how this happened on the back of my head, where it was like I got like a huge all of a sudden I just woke up and I had a huge bump, and it was just like on my neck, the back of my neck, like it looked like a carbuncle, and for like
carbuncle,
a carbuncle.
I don't know what that is.
Well, it's like a wart, like a big fucking wart thing, like when like people they have like the boils almost.
Yeah.
Like I got one like right below my skull, and I was just like I woke up and it was just there all of a sudden. I was like, oh fuck, and I just ignored it for like a week and a half. And it's like I should have done something. I should have been like, oh, like if I was like,
well, when
gay,
did you?
I would have been like, but I'd be like, oh wow, like let me rub aloe vera on it.
I don't know if it's a gay thing.
Well, it's like a gay and woman thing. I feel like when straight guys' bodies are bothered, they're just like, oh, what? I don't know.
When did you eventually deal with it?
When it started breaking out, and it was like all over my head.
That's gross.
Yeah. It was gross, exactly. I had to take antibiotics and
of course, you got an infection. I'm pretty. I am. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I'm a hypochondriac because while I don't. Well, I'm pretty healthy, thankfully, but when something is like the slightest bit wrong, I worry about headaches.
Well, that's probably how it should be. Like I never ice. Like if I bump something, I never ice it. Right?
I bet, Mike. No joke. As you get older, this is small, but like I was on the Peloton the other day, and I went hard, and I could feel it in my hip flexors. And I'm at an age now where I know if I do not stretch, it's not like a matter of like, oh, that's going to be rough. It's going to be like, oh, I might be getting hip surgery in 4 years. So you start to become like a little more of like, oh, I shouldn't mess around.
My body is a
this.
wonderland. Yeah.
So like, I bet you as like you continue, as you get a little older, you will start to be a little more like, I'm going to go make sure that that's not cancer on the back of my head or whatever.
Right, right. Anyway, so what are we talking about today?
well, actually, I'll tee it up, but then I'm going to tee it up by asking you the first question because this was an episode you wanted to sort of explore. So the lens of which we are considering today is essentially exploring the idea of showing up as your boldest self. Risking to be your boldest self. And this was something you had wanted to explore. And so why don't you talk about why this feels relevant to you and why you wanted to explore
Great question. Great question. Well, yeah, because I guess why I wanted to do this is because I've gone through like a pretty big shift, I feel like, over the past 5 years, let's say, where, kind of through our branding work and through, just working more, but also making a conscious choice. Like there was something in me that made a conscious choice about how I was going to show up in rooms, right? And it's not put on or fake, like it is me, right? But it's like how I was going to lead in rooms. And it's risky, like I would say like the one room I did not really do that in was the play we did together because, you couldn't compete with that. You just couldn't compete with Joe Brancato, basically. But it was like,
oh, interesting.
Well, I don't feel like that was like, that's not normally how I am in a room. It's like, but regardless.
But if I may, I just want to say, because I know what you're saying, because it's not that you were muted, but you were definitely a little bit more, tame, but still are so uniquely yourself that you can't really help but be a bold version, I would argue, of of something without having to do much else.
Sure. And it's like, I guess there comes with that a lot of and so it's been a really special journey for me, because I feel like, oh, I know who I am, I know what I bring to a room, I know what it is that I'm good at, I know what it is that, even what kind of parts I would crush at or whatever the fuck. And so I just and I'm a little more fearless in the room. I feel like I'm a little more fearless because I have discovered sort of like or sort of allowed to run free this bold self. So for me, it's been a very liberating journey. It's been a very liberating journey to feel like I know who I am in the room. Right. So
and this is why you wanted to explore this.
Yeah, because I just wanted to talk about, well, what does that even mean? Like, and try and break it down as best as we can to sort of extend this, because as we'll get to, I think that this is probably the most important thing that certainly actors, and if not all artists, need to sort of figure out, what's your light, in another way of putting it.
Let me speak to
Please.
that to some extent about the angle we're somewhat going to take here, because there's lots of ways to consider this idea of showing up as your boldest self. But and while we'll give some specific examples at some point, ultimately what we are going to sort of begin with is point of view, because and this is, and I think there's so much value in this. I have been on like a point of view of like everything I look at, I'm like, what's the point of view, like I just find myself sort of stuck in this moment, because without a point of view, you've got nothing.
I agree.
Meaning you without a point of view, there's no way that you're going to stand out, because standing out based on what? It's not just wild action. It all starts somewhere. So we're going to
and I think that, and I am curious, because I would argue that you're a pretty bold artist, and so I'm curious about like how that developed in you, because for me, just to say why it was so liberating was because I was so concerned, and I still am, of course, a little bit, but about what people thought about me. Sure. I was so concerned about seeming professional, like I had my shit together, like I was this disciplined actor who was really, worked hard and was smart and like that, like sort of like that straight guy, sort of like, straight guy complex in the room of like, I think about that guy who makes those memes, and it's like the overly serious, like I'm an actor and, kind of thing. And I was so terrified of what people thought about me. But anyway, where for you, because you're pretty bold, like, and you've always been, at least as far as I've known you, even like when you walk into an audition room, you used to talk about, you used to come in with your coffee or finishing a phone call or like doing weird shit like that. It's like, where did this develop in you? Like, why did you develop this? Or was it conscious or what?
It's funny. I appreciate you giving the question back, but I'll say it's not something that like I really prescribe to. Meaning I don't. I'm just being honest. I don't necessarily really think of myself as someone who shows up boldly, but at the same time, I know that's not really true, because I know that similarly, I'll be in a room and I'll be perceived somewhat differently. So then what is that? What is that?
Well, that's, yeah. Sorry.
Please.
No. Keep going.
Well, I was just going to say what I think is true is that while I, of course, also care what people think, we all care what people think. Yeah. There is like an element of me always that has struggled to go along. I've never been a good follower. I've never been that trusting. So I think a lot of times, like my seeming boldness, or I'm not going to do that, or I'll do this, stems from being turned off or having an aversion to just doing what everyone else is doing inherently, just to say.
Yeah, well, that's like almost like the iconoclastic point, because I think, not to keep bearing the lead here, but like when we define bold, because I think we should talk about that and then circle back up here really quick. But so what are we talking about? And I like this definition. Being bold means being willing to take risks, being confident and courageous. Now, the first part of that sentence is the most specific for me, being willing to take risks. And I think that, you just made a really good point about like, and we'll talk about this, but when you see the reason, this desire not to sort of blend in or follow or to be a contrarian or to do something different, sometimes just for the sake of it, right? There's risk behind that. And it's polarizing. And the reason why I think that being bold, why we're even talking about this is an important thing, is I think number one, like in this very fast paced, very oversaturated, very like, a chaos moment we're in, it's better to leave an impression, whether it's like, I hate that dude's guts, than no impression at all, I would argue. Yeah. I just think like, and people are looking to these figures. I feel like, people are looking for, and I say this in relation to quote business, because it's like people are looking to prop up, especially in a political sense, like martyrs or like symbols of like, oh, like this guy, like this person was really betrayed this way or fucked over this way, or this person deserves more of this. These people, they've been unrightfully sort of shunned by X. Like we're in a moment where everybody's sort of looking for martyrs and symbols almost. And I'm not, and this is more of a political statement what I'm making, but I think this goes in everything. I think that even okay, I'm gonna have to bleep it out. Take something like some theater we see in New York, right? They're not making great work, right? Like they're not actually making, the work isn't good, but it's about what they represent, because they're taking this risk, because they're putting themselves against mainstream theater, because they're sort of wedging themselves, like they grow this audience because they've almost positioned themselves on a playing field. Does this make sense what I'm saying?
Well, it does, but I'm gonna even take it in another, this idea of sort of separating. It's built into us culturally now. What I mean by that is I'm really fascinated by TikTok. I'm on right. a lot. I find the platform to be fascinating, and this is kind of a similar concept with TikTok. You've got a mere matter of seconds to have something that is going to be like, oh, what's that? What's the point of view? How does it relate? What's the take on a whatever? Right. And I don't care if it's a trend or it's an original. It doesn't matter what the hell it is. It's like, why do I engage? And then how is it bold enough right. to earn my time? And listen, I just gotta say, like, what a crazy, unhealthy thought, by the way, and process.
Well, it leads to people. I mean, I think about, not to take it here, but it's like, I think about like these OnlyFans models who are like, sleeping with like 200 exactly. guys in a day or something. It's like, exactly. It's because you need to capture attention very quickly. Exactly. You need to take a big, okay, well, how do you capture attention? Like, it's not going to be by doing something that is orthodox, normal, safe, homogenous with everybody else. You have to do something very risky. You have to do something that will put that is a big risk that, and that's kind of the thing. What I'm saying too is like, the more people who hate you, the more people who love you, because people are almost looking for like people to follow in some ways. And I think the big reason why being bold is really important is because, especially as performing artists, people get a sense of who you are faster, because you are leading with a very big choice in some way, or taking a very big risk, or you're not afraid to, and we'll talk about like all of this stuff, or express an opinion very quickly in a room or whatever the fuck it is, people know who you are quicker. Now, some people might argue that like the mystery, there's something to be said about making people, lean into you. I think that you can only kind of get away with that if you're like a 10 out of 10 in terms of being hot. It's like the only people who can get away with mystery that sort of like make people lean in and go like, oh, you have to be fucking gorgeous. Like,
well, yeah, I mean, that's a very exactly. It's like in terms of the online space of capturing that kind of instantaneous attention and interest.
Right. Well, I'm even thinking of like in a room with like in like a read through or like at a table read.
Oh,
it's like
interesting.
the person who's like kind of leaning back. Well, it's the same thing as the online space. Like they're like the people who truly make me lean forward are the people who don't.
Well, think about it. Think about it, Mike. Humor, sex, trauma. Maybe we could separate politics.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
There's very basic things that were. Sorry, I heard someone's in our hallway, like hitting the stairs. Humor, sex, trauma, maybe politics, and I don't know, maybe health. What are some like very basic things that I'm like, I react to. Like there's not. We're playing with a. And it's kind of a simple lens to consider this through, because actually it's a good point. It's a good point that you bring up because let's bring it back now to how separate from online, even when you walk in the room, to your point about me. Well, and I'm not coming for myself, so I'm not saying I'm an ugly person, but I'm not walking in and people aren't going, Patrick Schwarzenegger. Oh my god.
Well, I think it's exactly. We're like real people world. I think we're sevens, maybe, like real people world, but like movie star theater world, I would say I'm like a 5.
Yeah,
I have to say, but that's how I feel. It's like, but so anyway, continue.
No,
right.
so therefore, it's like, well, what are you coming? So, for example, like, actually, this is fascinating that we're talking about this, because I've subsequently, my sense of humor and my trauma, like my work, like my willingness to go as deep as I can sometimes, and is like part of what I've got to show up as my boldest self, because I can't rely on.
Well, exactly, on those things you can't coast, and it's like this is what's important about this, and I want to circle this back to you. I don't know why I closed it, but this there's a sense of danger in this, right? So what's implied here?
Yeah.
I think that is interesting about being bold is danger. There's danger because there's a risk. We're saying that being bold is taking a risk and being okay with taking that risk, right? Somebody who is, so what's I just want to say, like, I think what's interesting about you is when you walk into a room, the times I've been in like rooms with you, you like come in, like, it's like you come into the room, I always have like 4 bags or something. You have your iced coffee and you're like, and you're taking up a lot of space when you walk, like literally, but it's like, it feels with your sunglasses. And I say this because, what's interesting about that is, like, again, you are, the reason why that is risky is because you are taking up space, because you are almost exposing, exposing yourself to judgment. Right. And it's like, I see this in rooms I'm in sometimes where it's like, I'm not afraid to say the dumbest shit. I'm not afraid to say the stupidest shit. I'm not afraid to, and it puts people somewhat at ease because they feel like they almost can poke fun sometimes and tease.
Or I would argue, like, well, he's crazy, so maybe I can be freer myself, because if he's so crazy, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, it's like there are people who are not risky, actors, especially that I'm thinking of, like who are not risky actors, who almost poke at you from the sidelines too. Though, like you do get people say mean shit about you. They'll say something sort of like, or they'll roll their eyes, or they'll do something. It's like they're on the sidelines, sort of poking at you,
Sure.
because they are scared, and so. Why did you say that? That's not who. By the way, definitely not her. She's
okay.
fucking
You're
crazy.
gonna bleep that, right?
Yes, of course. But you know, it's like so there's danger in being bold, right?
Yeah.
So that there is danger. Yeah, and this is, I just want to say what's really interesting about this is you know, going back to being bold means being willing to take risks, being confident and courageous. You know, confidence, you know, when people say be more confident, you know, it's fascinating because what the fuck does that mean? It just, what the fuck does that even mean? Like, how do I be more confident? But I think this is a really helpful way to frame it. It's like, oh, confidence means I will take risks. I will do things that expose me to ridicule or expose me to judgment, and I don't care. I mean, think about like the quarterback. I think about, like, you know, the quarterback of my high school football team, who was probably one of the most confident people I know. This guy, you know, tall, get right up to you, shake your hand. He wouldn't look at you as you talked to him. He'd kind of look around to see if there's better shit going on. I mean, this guy did not give a shit what you thought about him. He did not give a shit if he came off as an asshole. He did not give a shit if he came off as rude. He did not give a shit if he intimidated you. And I'm not saying be a bad person, but this is also why bad people work. This is why people who are mean work a lot, I think, is because...
Well, people who are withholding when you feel like you can't get what you want from them. Well, it's funny that there is a level, I would argue. I was thinking about this with, so, you know, this job I'm up for. And one of the things I said was, because it's not, I don't know when this was coming out or whatever. I said, I was like, I won't go into next year with something that's predetermined. You know what I'm talking about? I said, so if that's the case, I'm pulling myself from consideration. And that was shocking for them. You could tell. They were like, what? Well, that's the way it is. I'm like, well, then I'm not doing it.
That's risky.
Exactly.
That's fucking risky. That's hard. That's
hard.
But
then it's also kind of like, oh, wow, I want that. Do you the unattainability?
You have to trust it. Well, that's why it's confidence. Just to be clear, that is literally what confidence means, is like you in that situation asking for, I mean, I think about even like a job, you know, last year that I took, where it's like, you know, I wanted more money. I think you know what the job is. I wanted more money. I don't have agents. And they were like, absolutely not. It is what it is. And it's like, and like, you know, if I had confidence in myself, I would have taken the risk and been like, okay, I'm not doing it. And it's like, but the problem is right. I think what's hard about this concept is that we feel like, because we are a lot of times going from job to job, or financially insecure, you feel like you can't afford to take a risk, right? You feel like you can't afford to take the risk. Whereas if you were, again, confident that you could figure it out, if the risk failed, then you'd be more willing to take it. You know what I mean? So this is just for me, it was just super preparing for this, eye-opening to go, oh, that is what confidence is. Confidence means and being bold are kind of the same thing. It means exposing yourself to sort of danger and being okay with it. And it does not matter, you know? So, okay. So moving on.
Well, but I briefly did want to just talk about, examples of what that looks like to take risks in some ways, because I think it can look like different things. And even though we're gonna keep it, again, primarily focused on point of view, we do think that there's plenty of examples of
Oh boy.
of people. What?
No, I'm just having thoughts about this. Keep going.
Well, and I'm actually going to start with this random one of like press for a quick second, actually, because someone the other day, I forget who it was, said, "Could I just did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory?" And so someone was like, "Well, did you see that press interview with Hugh Grant?" Or maybe it was Michael, who was like on the Charlie press tour. Because Hugh Grant played
An Oompa Loompa.
all of the Oompa Loompas, and apparently he like hated it. And so he's sitting next to Timothy Chalamet, and they're asking him questions, and he's boldly being like, "Yeah, it's the worst experience of my life. Hated it. Stood there by myself with a contraption on me, and just like but was actually being quite charming, but on a press tour for the movie." And
well, yeah, it's confidence. It's bold. It's being bold. He's not afraid of the risk.
Exactly.
That's going to come to him by saying that.
And he goes, but see, then this is what's interesting. And I think we'll get to more about why this is hard and what's at stake, because then you go, well, what's really at stake? Because he goes viral for it. Even if it hurts the movie, maybe let's say it hurts the movie, or the PR people behind the team are like, Hugh, what the fuck? You can't go out there and say shit about the movie. Well, the payoff could be, well, he's sort of stirred up some buzz in a lot of ways.
Oh, I think that's valuable. Exactly true. No, I think it means I think you're so right. And I'm even thinking about press wise, like I'm thinking about like, someone like, this is so stupid, and you're not gonna, Marshawn Lynch, who was what was he, a tight end or he played, was he a full, I'm not great with sports, but he played for the Seahawks, and now he actually has an acting career. He was in Bottoms, that movie Bottoms. He's in a bunch of movies.
Every word you have said in the last 30 seconds just sounds like gay sex acts.
Yeah, tight end. Exactly. Bottoms. But Marshawn Lynch is a football player, basically, right? Retired now. Who I believe he is basically is transitioning into an acting career. What's fascinating is why this guy, great player, but like he would do press interviews literally, and he would be like, he would I forgot what he would say, but he had this line where he'd be like, I'm not answering any questions. Like he would sit there at the table post game, which they have to do, and he's like, I'm here because I have to be here. I'm not answering any questions. And then somebody would ask him a question, be like, I'm not answering any questions. And then somebody else asked, and he'd have to sit there for 20 minutes, and he would just say, I'm not answering any questions. I'm not answering any questions and this, people loved it. People loved, which like you would think is so counter to like what these guys rely on when they retire, which is like their personality, which because they become hosts or they become commentators or they become, media personalities a lot of times when these guys leave. And so you think you have to be chummy with the press. You would think that you should be chummy with them and be like, but no, that's sort of more bold, risky. It's what has allowed him to make this transition, in my opinion, into an acting career.
Well, I want to say something about like the reason I wrote down here Sia and her wig as an example.
Sure,
is because just go with me here. Imagine being like, and then I'm going to go on stage and I'm going to cover my face.
Great point.
And that's risky. 100%. Because you could go on stage and be like, what is going on? Why is this woman covering her? So there's, but you go like, well, what's my point of view? Like, what story does that tell? How does that relate to my music? And how does and not caring about the people who are like, what is she doing? And instead being like, this is who I am, owning it, leaning in, and then building an entire base off of that.
It's so hard in the moment to do this because literally when we're talking about clothing, especially, it's funny. I auditioned for something at a big theater recently, very big theater in New York, and I came in with my fucking pit vipers and my baggedy ass like Ancient Aliens outfit, and like, you know, my Crocs, and like it was for Shakespeare, and like I could tell. But just to be clear, it wasn't like I was auditioning for like, you know, Romeo or some shit, but like, you know, it was like I could tell that everybody was a little like, what? Like they were a little like, okay.
So what do you think that? But let's go there. Let's lean in there for a second. Why do you think that they were like that?
Because you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to come in looking like it's like, you know, beautiful, like, you know, my tight black t-shirt and like my perfect jeans with my Doc Martens, or like, you know, you're not supposed to come in and have a personality. Basically, I would argue in most auditions, you're supposed to be sort of a blank canvas in some ways, number one, and that blank canvas has to be very like it's like our showcase. How would you describe sort of our showcase outfits, you know, when we graduated school? It's like very crisp, very,
well, because
you know, neutral.
Can I offer this? And I'm not. This has nothing to do with you. This is truly like just food for thought. Could they have felt disrespected?
But that's the whole point, and maybe they did. Oh, by the way, I'm sure they did, but that's the risk I take, right? It's like, and this is absolutely, well, but that's literally what being bold is you risk.
Yes.
You risk,
no.
You know,
this is why I'm curious about this, because what's interesting, Mike, is I actually, and this is why I don't even know if it was I mean, it might have been a clear choice for you, probably to some extent, but I remember again years ago when you came in for War Boys, and you came in, and the reason I remember it is because you were in an AT, and your hair, you had a bandana wrapped around your head, and you were far, and all these other, you know, Yaleys were coming in, basically like, you know, button ups, and, you know, basically living in a wholly other different world. And there you were, and you couldn't help again but be uniquely yourself. I will say, just want to say, I remember my feeling being like, oh, he's here to work. That was my experience. My experience wasn't anything other than like, oh, this is a guy who just came in here because he's working on the script today. And that was a really good, positive experience for me.
But then other people are going to feel like it's like, oh, this guy isn't,
he didn't want to look the best.
He didn't want to look the best. He's not gonna. He's a liability. He's probably messy. He's probably blah blah blah.
Who knows?
It's like there's all this shit, and but
I'm not criticizing, by the way. I'm really just working the thought
I
out,
don't take any. I don't take it as any. And by the way, I'm sure my acting was not good, but you know, it's like It's funny because, well, this is what, when we're talking about clothing, you know, which actually surprising that this is all revolving around clothing. You know, it's like people make judgments based off of what you wear. And so, like, if you come in neutral, surprisingly, at least, and we're talking about acting now, which is whatever, but you come in neutral, clean, professional, well-kept, it sends a message of this person will not be a problem. This person has their shit together. Like that, it's a very safe thing.
Sure.
If you come in a little crazy, or not even a little crazy, just like, you know, it's not like I'm coming in like looking home, like, you know, but it's crazy for a room. Mm-hmm. You know, I experienced this too, doing Anything Goes, like with musical theater people. Everybody comes in like,
right,
like looks fucking like perfect, ready to work, jacked. Like my fat ass would come in like, you know, with like my shorts and like a bandana and like my pit vipers and like, you know, some shirt that said like you know, FBI or some shit, and like it was weird. And it feels unsafe for others too. That's the thing, right? Is like, I think what's interesting about this concept of being bold is that it inherently, if you're putting yourself in danger in some way, it's going to make other people a little uncomfortable. How could it not? How could being bold, when Billy Porter, you know, if Billy Porter were to walk up to me in a conversation wearing, you know, that meme where it's like You know what I'm talking about? The hat that opens up like the that's like, and that's the thing, right? Is like you wear something like that, like now that's a meme. Everybody makes fun of him for that. But like if Billy Porter came up to me wearing that, I would be intimidated. I would feel a little unsafe because it's not because if it's like because it's so much, because it's so intense, because it's so sort of unorthodox. Like part of me can't help but feel like a little intimidated, right? So anyway,
no, I think that's, and just to be clear, you know, so that's clothing, but there are other examples. Just take social content, social media. This is another great example. You know, and we were just talking about this with TikTok about like that's so when we're talking about being your boldest self and whether that's just sharing your point of view as an artist or trying to grow an audience. You know, actually, this is fascinating. I was looking at this. You know, I know I've been going on with this stupid video for weeks now, but here's what's interesting. I get more followers every day, and here's why this is fascinating. I was looking at, I won't say who, but some people that we know, other accounts of theirs. Some of their videos which have millions of views, but they didn't translate to followers. How does this relate to this idea of being bold and showing up? Well, the content, it's not just about views. What translates then to followers is something that, again, I think to your point, has a point of view that goes, oh, I am interested in learning more about what this person has to ultimately say. You know, that's kind of how when that content translates to followers, essentially.
Well, this is why, I mean, look, unless you're like super hot, which is basically being bold without trying.
Yeah.
Because like being that hot, like it is like risky in a way because it is so, because you're out there. So people can't help but look at you, right? So you're exposed.
Scrolling on TikTok and there's a little last night and there's like this young Latino guy sitting the camera, his huge penis is in his shorts, clearly exposed. He's just sitting there looking at doing a live and you're like, what do you think? You know, I mean, you can't help it to your point because it's so
like,
gratuitous.
This is why, like, you know, when I think about people who can sort of get away with like really curated like pages that are like super professional, but like super like, oh, like actors, like all these people are like hot. Like there's not any ugly people doing that, like or normal looking people. Like they're all people who are like stunningly gorgeous who can get away with like these really like, you know, curated, clean, safe pages.
Exactly.
Right. And so anyway, social content 100%. I think the creative work piece is, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's all got to come down to creative work, right? It's like that's what we have is like, you know, what our creative work is. And you've listed some people here and in terms of who make bold creative work.
Well, you know, like I've really been on a Cola Scola train. We're going to an event with Jeffrey and Cole and are going to an event of theirs on Monday. Cole, if I'm being quite candid, Cole has done what I wish I had done. I'm just being honest, which is, and it relates to this idea of being bold because right away, I mean, Cole and Jeffrey, I always use them as examples because Jeffrey created the very first shit gay guys say YouTube video. I don't even know if you remember this. This is years ago.
No.
And what Jeffrey and Cole did was they created work. They were using the platform in a bold way, social media, YouTube. Before, I mean, people were doing it, but you know what I'm saying? They sort of took gay culture and were like, let me fuck around with this. And so they were bold right from the beginning, all the way up to now. And look at what Cole was able to do with Oh Mary. That all came from point of view. That all came from, let me continue to make my work, put it out there, develop, you know, trust and following, and then, you know, their instincts on how they even created Oh Mary, and then the audaciousness of it, and just sort of being like,
not doing any research. Exactly. Right, exactly. Well, it's like, even I remember I was an older person was referencing it when I was teaching a class, actually, and a veteran had heard about the show and was like super offended by it, but knew nothing about it, but was just like super offended by the show, right? About like, you're making fun of this person.
Interesting.
Blah, 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 blah. But no, well, I mean, that's what makes it bold, right? I mean, that is like, again, what makes it bold, I would argue, because look, come for me. Like in New York, like queer theater is not bold or risky anymore. It's not like it's on the whole. That's not what makes it like sort of bold and risky. I think what sort of makes that show like super bold and risky is like, again, the sort of like almost the lack of reverence for the material in some ways, like, not doing any research, kind of Abe Lincoln's an asshole in it, and it's like John Wilkes Booth is like the guy she's fucking. I mean, it takes.
And just to say, while I hear about the queer theater thing, I will say, commercially, for a show where a non-binary person is playing Mary Todd Lincoln, their attendant is played by a trans woman, Bianca, who we met, doing and all those queer people playing the other. I mean, that's really. I think there are probably tourists going into the show,
exactly,
not even realizing.
Yes,
what
from a commercial, 100%. And so, no, I'm not trying to say it's not a bold thing to do, but yeah, and I completely agree with you.
Cole is the John Waters of theater for me,
right? Well, yeah,
John
exactly.
Waters, talk about. I mean, John Waters is a great example of showing. I mean, it doesn't get bolder than John Waters,
right. And isolating and polarizing, like
exactly.
And again, what's interesting about this is like, again, from a perspective of bold, it's like people are not like, even who's somebody ever but Tom Cruise, Austin Butler, or Taylor Swift, but not even Taylor. Even people can be a little polarizing, but like artists that everybody likes, they're not really bold. I wouldn't describe these people as bold. I wouldn't describe them as risky. I wouldn't describe them as having incredibly strong points of view, like people that everybody likes, or even plays that everybody likes. Like, look, even take Hamilton. Like Hamilton, we're in a New York bubble, but like there are people who despise the idea of Hamilton. They despise in this country who like think it is bad. Be that like, that Hamilton is bad, basically. Like people who we don't meet those people really. But like there are people who despise it. Like it is a polarizing, still, I think, a polarizing piece of theater, right? And that is what bold means ultimately too, is that I think that if something is polarizing, it is bold, right? Now, if everybody hates it, that's a little, I still think that's pretty bold because it's a risk.
And by the way, I hear you about the artist that everybody likes. The only thing I want to push back, because I could be totally wrong about this, and I think it's going to be, but I think about someone like Beyonce, and I think about something like Cowboy Carter, and how that was a bold move for her to make, and I would argue subsequently to continue to build on her massive success in a way that's like, I've got to make another move because because up to this point, her boldness and audaciousness has been being the best, which you go, okay, and you hold that at some level. So then to go, listen, David Bowie did this. I mean, it's funny. This is not a new conceit, showing up as your bold. In fact, Mike,
sure.
As the more we talk about this, the obvious, I'm saying it's obvious. Obviously, there have been thousands of examples, probably, of the most amazing artists in the world who have been able to show their creative work and use that as a leverage. And in fact, I think we could all agree, wouldn't it be nice if that was our primary backbone as well?
Well, we'll take the Beyonce thing, the Cowboy Carter thing, though. Like, yes, more people like it, I guess, than don't like it. If that is true, I mean, but there are people who like hate on Beyonce, who like really hated on Beyonce for making that album. Like, again, people not in our circles, and maybe it was also like getting such media press, but there are people out there like racism, #racism, like, who did not like her doing that and thought or like people were like, oh, she's not country music, da 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 da. It's like, why is she coming in here and doing this? Like, and I say this because there is danger involved in her doing something like that.
Yes,
because the reason why it's
exactly.
also dangerous.
I'm saying that too.
Yeah, you are. And it's like, I hear you about the polarizing thing because it makes sense, because there's danger, because that could have really backfired for her. That could have been really, because it was such a crazy move for her to make, to do that. It was such a left field move.
Right.
And so it could have fallen flat on its face. One person that I want to say who I think is, take someone like Nick Cage. Like, Nick Cage is probably like one of the boldest actors ever, I would argue. Like, I think nobody would argue with that.
Yeah,
and again, somebody who a lot of people hate, a lot of people love, somebody who makes an impression, and somebody you do have a point of view about, because of his choices are very risky, because and period, they're very, very risky, where it's like, even like, take someone okay, let's talk about like Nick Cage and Austin Butler. Okay, like two polar opposites, right? It's like, yes, there are sort of stars that everybody will like, and sort of have homogenous appeal, like universal appeal. Like, sure. I don't think anybody has super. I think people love Austin Butler, sure, but I don't think there are people out there who like despise Austin Butler. Like, well, I think they're kind of like, okay, yeah, whatever, or they're like, they love him, right? Yeah. And so I'm not saying like, but again, that's somebody who has had like childhood, who was a child actor, who's gorgeous, who is a really good actor. And I don't think that's the safe route for most people listening to this. The safe route is not going to be somebody everybody likes.
Right.
Like, to try and have mass appeal, because I just don't think that's it, So anyway.
Well, let's talk about why this is difficult to do, right? Because we're talking about, and to state, some of it's going to be obvious, but let's talk about why this overall, showing up as the boldest version of yourself is tricky.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually want to do this one first, because I think that this one is more unique. I'm just jumping down. It's hard to do this in a professional setting that is not your own, right? So, obviously, the main reason why it is difficult to do this in any, not just as an actor, but I would argue in any situation where you're being employed by someone, the risk is much higher, because we're literally talking about being able to pay our bills and earn money, right? So sometimes it feels safer to keep your head down, fly under the radar. That includes that, like, that old trope about even at like a company, right? Like a corporation. It's like, don't draw too much attention. Somebody who doesn't have a lot of big ideas, but he gets the job done, right? Like, when you are literally exposing yourself to risk and to danger in a professional setting, you're risking your livelihood. You're literally risking being able to feed yourself, right? So I think that that's why it's always really hard to do this in a professional setting.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it should be hard to do it in a professional setting. And I want to be clear about what I mean by that. Every professional setting is going to have a different culture, and every professional setting is going to have a different setting. Expectation and needs of the individual based off of the job and whoever the founders or leaders are crafting. And so, for example, I said this, if you're doing data entry work at my business, I don't need your boldest self.
Sure.
I need you to put the numbers in, and I need you to do it quietly, please. You can go be bold
this is,
somewhere
I think
else.
this is what's going to change with AI.
Okay.
Is that jobs like that, unless they are highly skilled jobs, like which surprisingly, I mean, trade jobs, right? Most jobs that just require execution, pure execution, those are the jobs that are the easiest to replace. It is the job, but like every other job that were like, people are looking for innovators. And so
Yes.
I would completely agree with you that yes, if you're doing data entry for me, just do it. You're just a function. Like you're just being a function. However, I would say that person doesn't have a lot of job security because they can easily be replaced.
Let's give an example. Let's give like a more specific to us, at least industry example, because one of the things that's tricky, especially when you're developmental, is you show up on set to, let's just say you're doing, a 2 scene co-star, 6 lines. It's you want to make an impression because you obviously want to work, and maybe it's kind of an interesting co-star. All the co-stars I've done, thankfully, have been fairly, weird little parts that did require me to be uniquely myself.
Right.
However, I'm still perfunctory a bit, and I need to not cause problems, and I can get and
well, this is Gen Z right here.
And in fact, I'll never forget. I just want to say one thing.
Yeah.
Quick example of this. It was FBI. I was playing. I had to like move. We did a rehearsal, and I was supposed to be picking up some toys in a room. Right when we went to shoot, they hadn't placed the props there, and I was like, "Just go with it, Joshua." So I just go with it and do something kind of different. The director's like, "What's going on? Why were you not doing what I was telling you to do?" And I said, well, the props weren't there. He said, well, you should have said something. What's my point? That's a good example where it's like, first of all, if I was a regular, I'd be like, no, they weren't. Don't talk to me like that. But you're sort of like in this dance of like, I just told you to pick up the props. I don't care about like you reinterpreting it to make it work. Like that's what we said. So you sort of have a dance to do of like,
right, exactly. Of like, it's like, yeah, it's that's an example where you're trying to go along to get along and not cause
exactly
a stink. But yeah, the quote best thing you could have done in that moment was to sort of be like, no, to take that risk and speak up. And this is interesting about Gen Z, which is like Gen Z, they have, it's funny, right? Because like the whole thing with Gen Z is like everybody has an equal voice. I think this sort of entitled sort of like thing, this sort of like I don't need you, I don't give a fuck about you, is, does it help or hurt them? This is actually my major question, is does it help or hurt them? Because it actually doesn't make them more, because people live in fear of Gen Z. People live in fear of young people, which is like the first time ever in our history, like directors, most of us live in fear of young people, that they're going to cancel us, that we're going to say something that offends them, that they're going to fuck us over, right? And so does this help or hurt them? That's the question I have, is I don't know, but
well this is sort of going to then in a more macro sense, another reason why this is hard to do, which is because we live in this moment where things can go very fast. So if
exactly.
you make a mistake, if something catches on, and you can be pummeled, and that's
exactly
terrifying. I think, yes. I don't know if this is true for you too, but part of what's terrifying about it is like how far is this going to go? I mean, all kidding aside, I'm not sure if you're following these Nikki Blonsky TikToks. Have you seen these, Mike?
No.
I'm in my own world on TikTok.
Yeah.
Don't go do something else. Stay with me, Danny.
I'm here.
These Nikki Blonsky TikToks are killing. Do you know who Nikki Blonsky is?
No.
She played Tracy Turnblad in the movie of exactly, and then she like disappeared. She was apparently racist. She tried to get canceled, and she's like not good. All of her cameos that people bought are being posted to the internet, and they're really bad. And my point is like things can like I'm sure she's, and apparently she changed her price from $20 to $100 because I'm sure she's like, people are. I mean, I'm coming for her. I did 3 impressions of her TikToks. I've made like 6 TikToks about Nikki Blonsky, and my point is like shit just takes off, and you don't want to be the center of it.
Well,
so part of why it's hard,
exactly.
Unless it's good.
Well,
unless
and
it's
this
good.
But this is, and look, according to, somebody was like, oh, cancel culture, who commented on our thing. I'm not saying not to hold people accountable, but let's talk about why this doesn't lead to bold work. Is because in general, people are just, rightfully, wrongfully so, are just more afraid in general. They're just more afraid to say anything in a room that can be perceived. Like, I notice it in conversations I have in rooms. It's not even from a political sense. People are very afraid to say things definitely. There's this thing in the air where it's like people are very afraid to just sort of have a strong opinion and just say, here's what I think. I've noticed it drastically over the past 5 years. I don't know if you have. And again, not even related to politics.
Yes,
it's,
but but that's where it largely stems from.
Of course.
Even though I know that your point is, and I do agree that, like, we were herd mentality is the moment in a lot of ways.
There's more homogeny in terms of, and less like more. There's more keeping your head down in a There's more keeping your head down and homogeny in a process.
Yep.
And I think that there's a lot of, as a result, which is scary to me, there's a lot of self-censorship that comes along with that, right? So, because per your point, something can go viral, something can be passed around very quickly with the internet. If you fuck up in some way, like even if it's in a rehearsal room off Broadway, it will spread because people will talk about it. People go to Reddit, people will go blah, 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 like, it'll spread. So totally. That's, I think, one big reason this is hard. And, I just have to say the human pressure around homogeny. There is a tendency to avoid confrontation or stand out in an environment, right? That's instinctual. And as you said, that's 100% survival based. So even if we weren't in this delicate moment, this is just sort of a base human
because the worry, of course, is that and this is where there is a huge disparity when it comes to why this is about money. The reason why Elon Musk and Donald Trump are fearless is because Donald Trump has aligned himself with the wealthiest person in the entire world. He's side by side. They run the world,
right?
And so where this comes down to dollars is you're worried about taking bold risks because you're worried that the rug can be pulled out from underneath you,
right? If you fail, you can lose everything.
What's been so scary about, I think, Trump for a lot of people? Oh my God, I was listening to this book about borderline personality disorder, and it's like crazy how much it's like.
He definitely has borderline personality disorder.
And one of the things I was listening to was like, if you go against someone with BPD, you become a villain, and they will come for you to destroy you, to make sure you never get in their way, and that is again part of what's scary. I think, and partly why you're seeing all these people kowtow now to the Trump administration is exactly this. No one wants to stand out and say we want to maintain our DEI program. In fact, I won't say the name of it, but there's I'm not going to say it. People are kowtowing, and because I think of exactly this. You also wrote here that it's easier to blend in with everyone else and follow the group, which is true. And you will give Traders as an example.
Well, no, I just gave this. It's fascinating when you watch Traders, when it's like people aren't sure who the trader is, and then they just write what everybody else is writing. And it's just that too. And it's like, I don't even think they're choosing. It's just like, sometimes it's just easy to feel like you're almost being swept away by a current.
Sure.
Like all of a sudden.
Well, what are you supposed to do if in that instance, if you don't know if you don't have a sense, but someone else has a sense, Why not?
Well, that's fair, but also take, for instance, I think a good example is sort of this, the example you gave with the Trump administration, right? It's like, I think, it's like, it can all of a sudden, especially because I think a lot of these DIEI programs were built just as a result of, like, it was just an ocean it's like all of a sudden I got dropped into an ocean. And next thing I know, it's 5 years later and I have a DEI program. Like I didn't even think about it. And just the reverse of that is happening now, where it's like all of a sudden I'm being plunked into this other ocean where it's like the DEI being taken. And it's like, okay, I don't even know if people, and this kind of gets to have a point of view of it. They're just kind of like all of a sudden, like they're just reactionary and almost subconsciously just mirroring cues around them, right? They're just mirroring what other people are doing, and I think it relates to this next point of.
By the way, I think this is the low key the biggest point of all.
Yeah, sure. Which, go ahead and say it.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off to take it away from you. Go ahead.
No, I basically what I'm saying is I think that genuinely people don't know how they feel about things, and this could be for many reasons, right? It could be, and we all have those things. I'm not, it's sometimes we don't have enough information, especially as things are happening so quickly in today's society. It's like we don't have all of a sudden, like, what do you think about quantum computing and what it means for jobs? I don't know. It's like, or it's hard to almost form your own opinion because things are moving so fast. So people can't really have informed opinions about things, which is totally fair.
But here's where I just want to, because here's where I see so much value in underlining this point, and I think we've been talking about this a lot recently, which is as from an artist, the artist class listening to us in particular. What else do you have? And
nothing.
And just to reflect personally for a minute, one of the things that's been hard for me about this idea is the truth is that I have been primarily a quote unquote interpretive artist, as we've talked about before,
right?
Even when I am creating my own work, and where a mirror has been held up to me in relation to this idea, honestly, has been, okay, well, when I look at the online space and when I get swept up in just playing the game of the online space using trends without a point of view,
sure,
it's fine as an exercise to like get to know a platform, but what I'm feeling deadened and a bit flattened,
right?
and
well,
so,
it numbs you out, right? Exactly.
And so this, I actually think, is our biggest challenge, which is to go, how do we really feel about the world and ourselves?
Well, yeah, sort of like the, similar to what you're saying about sort of being deadened and numbed out. It's like the fact is we are so over inundated with hot takes, with press pieces, like hit pieces, or outrage, reaction, people in the comments, that it's almost even hard to know where we begin and they end, right? Because it's amazing how much the content I consume online, it's almost like brainwashing, right? It's like because you're being fed so much by the algorithm, your opinions aren't, it's actually quite scary to think about, like your opinions aren't even your own. 100%. Like they are, and let me say this too, it's like, because there was a filmmaker who how do I put this, white filmmaker white male filmmaker who recently I was talking to, who made a film that did really well at festivals, like about like migrants. And it's funny because I'm like, not that that's not his story to tell, but it's like, it's not his story. I say this because is that what you really want to tell stories about? Or is that you sort of doing what you think you should be doing? It's like, this guy did not seem like somebody who was out there actually doing shit, cared about these people. He was, to me, it seemed like, and I don't think it was like like, you know, malicious, like he was like, oh, like my movie will do better because it's about this subject matter. I actually don't think it was malicious. I think it was that he's sort of so wrapped up in his in like what people are telling him should be important to him, which I'm not saying it's not important, whatever, that he doesn't even know what the fuck he wants to make movies about. Because like it just, and maybe I'm passing a judgment here that's like, oh, a white guy can't care about that, but it's like, is that really what you want to be making movies of? Is that really what lights you up and ignites you? Or is it just like, because you don't actually know, which was low-key my impression, what kind of shit interests you or what you're truly about? Like, you're just sort of like, without even subconsciously latching onto things that you think other people, I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense in any way.
It does. And here's where it's a missed opportunity. Let me see if I can make this quick and clear. Part of what I'm saying is that we I know agree that we are in a moment where we personally believe that we need to let go of a lot of expectation from the industry to be like, here's going to be your opportunity,
Right.
opportunity. Subsequently, if we're making our own work, it's where does it stem from? And to your point about this guy, for him to be in a position to make this and potentially, I don't know. I hear what you're saying. Let's just go along and say that judgment's true, that he was just sort of following the zeitgeist to try to get some, you know, career leverage, which is the implication. You know, let's just go with that. Yeah, that would be a real bummer because he's at the start of something. Why not, you know, leave some sort of creative legacy? So hurt.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, why is this important? So why is it? And I would argue that we are in such a unique moment currently of both a lot of homogeny in terms along like tribal lines, but also I just think we're in a unique moment where people are looking for, you know, the next big thing. People are looking for, because there's such chaos and everything feels upended, people aren't actually looking, and so much of what was normal or safe or orthodox in the past is almost being seen as not just like, you know, passe, but almost like bad across the board. You know, I would even argue that, like, you know, the Make America Great Again movement is not really about like the past or like it's orthodoxy. It's actually like completely destroying the past 100 years basically of like what. So I think on all sides people are looking back on the normalcy and the homogeny and the sort of norms of the past and challenging them. So in this moment of chaos, people are going to be looking to the people who are going to be seen are the people who are offering a new opinion, a new take, you know, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I'll also say this, you know, we're talking about why it's so challenging, but here's the truth. The truth is that there's no other option. So meaning because of all of this, and you know why, this is why we've long made the case in the comparison with business and our creative work in terms of even something like this, because people who are able to break through in their industries are typically, you know, they're carving out new paths that might not seem traditional to other artists, or excuse me, anybody in their respective fields. Therefore, you know, and you have this quote here about Adam Newman, who created WeWork.
Right. Well, this is a very famous quote where the guy Mayoshi-san or whatever is Masayoshi, you know, who was going to invest like $1 billion from, you know, CEO of SoftBank. He asked Adam Newman, like, in a fight, who wins, the smart guy or the crazy guy? And Newman said that an unhinged combatant willing to scrape and claw to survive could beat even the most skilled fighter. Masa said he was right, but that so far he wasn't acting crazy enough, right? So think even about like something like WeWork that was doing well and could have just been like a very successful subleasing company. No, it had to be something bigger than that. It had to be a unicorn. It couldn't just be that. It had to be even more. It had to be even more extreme, right? So there's this desire for people to want, like, I think people are looking for in this moment the most of something, the biggest of something, that is what I think people are looking for. And in a world that it's funny, right?
I just have to say something about that, tangentially but related. And this is tricky given everything else we've been talking about too recently, about in a moment in this world when that is what sort of, if we know that's the game to play,
Yeah.
how do we come to terms with that in relation to also for us as artists actually
I completely agree.
to slow down? And it's tricky.
And sorry, let me lift that up because you're so right. Like, I think that the same people, there's too much information. There's too much. Everybody has a platform now. And if you are not extreme, I would argue, in some way. Right. And I'm not, again, it could be extreme, like I'm the guy who, like, eats 1,000 Doritos a day or whatever the fuck. If there's not a level of extremity, you could be the most extreme nice person in the world, whatever the extremity is, there has to be extremity. We're in a moment where extremity is kind of the only thing that will break through, in my opinion. Especially as entertainers and as art makers. If we were knowledge-based people, it might be a little different, but even like knowledge-based academic, it's the people who are offering extreme sort of opinions on, like, in that way too, or talking about extreme topics, are the people who are breaking through the noise. And so that's why I think it's super essential. These are the people who are getting attention. Also, I think it's essential because there is a moment as we talk about wanting more authenticity.
I know. Well, this
right.
is big.
It's funny, right? Because, like, I think surprisingly, when corporations go all in on pride, for instance, I actually think it doesn't help them very much.
At this point. Maybe at one point it did. At this point, I think.
Well,
you're right.
Exactly. Like, I think 10 years ago.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it was like, but now I think even, correct me if I'm wrong, like, like a lot of people in the LGBT community are not like, oh wow, they know it's bullshit. It know
feels like a joke.
Yeah, it feels like a joke
because it's all about money.
Right. And so this is exactly what I think is important, is that using that as an example of, like, I think they'd almost be more respected in some ways if they're like, we're not doing that. Like, we make shirts. Like, we're not going to do fucking pride. There would be people who would be upset, but I think that it would garner, especially from younger people, more respect than that, because I think even the biggest advocates out there, in my experience, care more about me not being full of shit. Like, the people who are really doing the work and really they care more about me being not full of shit. And it's like, this is why it's surprising, as extreme as some people may think my opinions are on this podcast, it's like a lot of my friends are like true people who are like doing political activist work, we respect each other because they respect me, because I'm not going to blow smoke. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to be curious. I'm always flexible and willing to listen, but I'm not going to be inauthentic. I'm not going to, and I think authenticity is really, it's like these, it's like these country club Republicans pretending to be hunters. It's like, because the Republican Party has shifted more towards a working class party, as crazy as that is, it's like you have country club Republicans like going out there with hunting pictures, or like Donald Trump Jr. pretending he's like, or like, Mark Zuckerberg taking jiu-jitsu. It's like, people can see through all of this, right? The masses are not stupid. Most people know it's bullshit. Most people can see it's bullshit. So if you are somebody who is unafraid to take the risk and be you, even if it is against the fold, right? Like, I think it's funny, right? Like, this is why, believe it or not, this is why people love Donald Trump. It's because the perception is that he is not afraid to go against the grain and be who he is. But even as he's fucking people over.
I want to ask you about this because I was just thinking about this, and I'm this is where I get a little confused, right? Because I understand in a basic sense, like the idea of that. Like I go, oh yeah, like I see truly, like all snark aside, I'm like, okay, I see someone who is pretending to tell me the truth, but it is so, to me, so clearly a lie and manipulative,
Right. Well,
and
of course he lies.
self-serving. No, and to this point about him being borderline personality, like he's so clearly unhinged that there's nothing to me that feels authentic. It just feels damaged and dangerous.
Here's why it is authentic, even though which is wild because he's a huge liar. Take someone like a laughing stock, like take Ted Cruz, right? Ted Cruz in today's day and Ted Cruz in today's.
Did you ever see that? Did you ever see that? My cartoon president, and every time Ted Cruz would come on, he was a cartoon, and he'd go, "I'm Ted Cruz," literally every single time. Have you ever seen that?
No,
show?
I haven't seen that.
You gotta
no,
see it. It's good.
But it's like, take Ted Cruz, right? The reason why Ted Cruz is a laughing stock in so many ways is because he doesn't own who he is. He sort of started to try and paint, he grew out his beard, and it was fake. It was fucking bullshit. He would almost be more respected, I feel like, amongst the base if he owned the fact that he was sort of like a little worm. If he was like a little sort of like,
Stephen Miller.
Like he would. And so that is what I think. This is why people are attracted to Trump, because in an age where it's like Kamala Harris, is pretending, is obviously putting on an act, is obviously, even though she has policies I would agree with more, it's the fact that you can see transparently that she's putting on some sort of act.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's like, this is why a lot of people who respected Bernie, a lot of them went to Trump, is because Bernie is what you see is what you get on the whole. I think that his respect has dropped a little bit over the past couple of years because I think he's starting to fall more in line. But what I agree with you on is like, yes, it's fascinating how much he can get away with because people can tell he is not afraid to be him, fully him. Liar. People know he's full of shit. People know he's a liar. People will admit that. They know he's full of shit and he's a liar, but why they like him is because he's not ashamed of it. He is open about it. He is not afraid, which is sick. I'm not saying, but this is the moment we're in. And by the way, across the political spectrum, is people want somebody, quote, real. Even if they're liars, they want somebody who is real and not virtue signaling and not pretending to be something they're not.
Totally.
Right. It's like, even when Trump reads the Bible, it is so obvious that he doesn't give a shit about Christianity or anything like that. And you could tell even the way he handles it. And I feel like these people even know that. They know that, but they like it. They're just attracted to seeing somebody who is not ashamed to be who he is. So they convince themselves that he.
No, I know what. Well, here's where
I'm not saying it's good.
It's almost so bad that
yes,
like that moment with the Bible was it is such a joke. It's truly it's like almost so bad that it's good. Because
exactly.
you're like, wow, that is amazing. Like he's
because he gives no
so
fucks.
Shameless.
Because he gives no fucks. That is why people like him. Whereas most politicians, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it is kind of, they're hobnobbing. They're trying to figure out what people want to see, and so they're like, all of a sudden, somebody who's been a prosecutor their whole lives is like, I think we should give all black men weed or whatever the fuck, and is like full of shit and pretending to be like, that is, it's, this is the moment we're in. People want people who are
in a macro
unafraid.
sense, the authenticity piece is huge, which is underlining the point of what we're saying of like, in some ways, you're faced with this challenge anyway. Like, this is the moment to lean into this idea.
And if it gives you some motivation, this is how you can counter this. How you can counter somebody like people you disagree with, like Trump or whomever, it's like being authentic and not just saying things for the sake of saying things, being really expressing your opinions. And if you're a good person, a good moral person, like, you will gain more respect from all sides if you are somebody who can really own your opinion and but own your opinion and not just necessarily fall. The other reason why Trump is such an interesting politician, last thing I'll say, is because he doesn't fall into any, it's crazy that he can change his policies about 400 things, even things that are, quote, not Republican like, but people respect it. They actually respect the fact that he's wavering all over the place because it doesn't feel like he's trying to fall in line with something or follow some sort of herd. They're looking for that sort of, and so this goes for all of us. I think it's like,
it's funny, remember we did that Trump episode, and I told you at the beginning I was really going to try. It's funny, like I'm no joke, Mike. I am so blinded by, no BS. All kidding aside, I am so blinded by the attack on the trans community that I can't I can't think of literally anything he's doing, mainly because of how actively they're trying to go after the smallest of marginalized communities in a way that is so wild to me that I don't care if he said I'm giving every American $4 billion and hit my account today. I can't take him seriously.
But we're not, yeah, exactly. But we're not taught. But see, this is the big mistake people make, like everybody makes, is that it does not matter how you feel about him. He is successful. So it's like, what is, it's like, so, and I'm not saying that I would ever, like I said, never would in a million years vote for him.
But what I'm saying is I wanted to really try.
Yeah.
Try to be like, I'm not interested in living in a state of exhaustion and stress for 4 years. But so I really, there's a piece, as I said, I really wanted to be like, wait, give him a chance. But these people have no effect on your life. And I'm not sure if you saw the video of Sarah McBride in Delaware, that when she was announced, and the Speaker of the House and the Chamber continued to refer to her as Mr. McBride. It's like, why would you do that? What am I missing here that makes people do that? Am I wrong? Like, to
Of course you're not wrong.
It's insane to me that people go, oh, I'm gonna make this person feel bad. I don't know. It just doesn't.
Yeah. What skin is it off your sack? I completely agreed.
Exactly.
And
anyway, sorry, I'm not.
No.
It's so
good. No, you just earned your brownie points. Great. So anyway, I'm just joking. No, I know you believe it, but I don't disagree with you. No, but why you make a face of it?
No. I know what you're saying. It's like I'm actually. I don't understand what's going on. Okay, so how does one show up as their boldest self?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think that a useful sort of thing to think about is envision how you'd behave if you were immune to harm. This is a really sort of, and this gives you a sense of what you're doing to actually please people, right? So how would you dress? What would you post? What would you make? What choices would you make in your work, right? What would you say, right? So just imagining in your day-to-day life, like, what would I do if no harm could come to me, and that will give you a really clear idea as to what you're doing purely from a people-pleasing perspective. Now, what is interesting is that there are some people where it's like, this is not good because they're psychopaths or they're intentionally malicious or they're sociopaths or whatever. And it's like, yes, the checks and balances of society sort of keep people from behaving. But like, I would never, if my girlfriend would, even if she was okay with it, like I would never cheat on my girlfriend. I would never sleep with somebody else. I just would never do that. Right. So it's like, I'm not doing that because I have to, like, or I would never say something. I would never try and tear people down, like intention. Like I wouldn't do that. Even if no harm could come to me, that's just like, I know I am a good person. Right. So I wouldn't do certain things, even if, but it's interesting to go like, oh, well, for me to go, well, what are the things that I am holding back on because I'm afraid of what people are going to think about me or say about me. That is interesting. That is, now a lot of things are coming up in my head where I'm like, oh, yes, this even like, during this conversation, there are things that I've stopped myself from saying because I am afraid of what people are going to think about me, that happens, a lot. You know what I mean by this? Like just doing that thought exercise of, or what would I post? What would I, wear? I don't know. Does this ring true to you?
Yeah, of course it does. Of course. I mean, that's kind of the backbone of all of this, is that fear of of what are other people going to think. I mean, it's the same. I know I keep going back to social media, but we're not, that's what we're doing it for. We want people to think something, and whether like it and click it, period. Therefore, getting to this next piece here, if you were able to your point, envision how you would behave if you were immune to harm, so then what is that? How do you cultivate a point of view? I think these are interesting points. Go ahead and be more skeptical. Don't buy what people say hook, line, and sinker. I think, if I may, that I actually am a pretty skeptical person.
Yes, you are.
And I do think that I have a filter through much of what I hear, and I do think, subsequently to your point, that I have a point of view. Being iconoclast and challenge certain beliefs or institutions until you've had time to examine yourself and figure out what you believe.
Yeah, this, to me, here's why this is important to me, because as you can tell, one of the main things I think is one of the biggest detriments to being bold is societal pressure. I think societal pressure is probably one of the biggest hindrances. So I think again, not being aggressive, but being skeptical about buying things hook, line, and sinker, challenging people you're talking to explain themselves more. This is a point, well, I'll just jump to this point now. Asking people to explain themselves, not just sort of nodding to go along, to get along, and going, yeah, I agree, or, whatever it is. I don't care if it's like people, like you're at the table and people are saying, I hate this character or this guy should, and you're like, well, I don't know. I think that, it's like just being devil's advocate in some ways is a good way to sort of fake it till you make it. It's a good way because you're because again, when the crowd is saying one thing, what is bold in that moment is to challenge the crowd, is to challenge sort of what the crowd is saying. That is a risk you are taking. It is a way to start to sort of cultivate bravery, right, in these spaces of not being afraid when everybody's saying one thing or when everybody's doing one thing for you to do something different, right? So that's why this is really important as a concept to me.
I think this is interesting. Daily writing around ideas, helping you connect ideas and make connections. If I want to say something about this for myself, and you have more to say to this, I think, because you've been practicing it, I think, a bit much more recently. But two things, take the emails we've been writing, and the feedback you were giving me, and I was sort of, I'm someone who needs a little more time with things. I actually just work a little slower than you. And I need more time, and therefore, to the point about this, around cultivating a point of view, I won't say what it is because it doesn't matter, but the subject I was writing about for the episode, like I really did like just try to give myself space to go, well, where is this taking me? What is this making me not only think about, but experience and feel? And how does my point of view come from that? But where it came from, and I think that this is a rarity in this moment, is the space to
time and space. 100%. I completely agree with you. I mean, this is because the importance of like sort of like a daily writing process, whether it's like anything, you say something to me and during this conversation that I don't know how I feel about that. Or even if I brought it hook, line, and sinker in the moment, like the ideal would be able to take that thought, sort of go over here with it, and journal on it for a while, right? Just sort of, and when I talk about the connections, because I think what also makes a really unique point of view is the connections you're able to make. Like what makes Cola Scola what makes O'Mary such a unique piece, right? It's connecting, American history, Mary Todd Lincoln with sort of like this sort of like
queer culture.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, how do you, those sort of synapse, not like neural connections between things is what leads like, oh, Hamlet's like a Goofy movie. Well, I want to hear that, right? It's like, if you're able to make connections between things, that is ultimately what makes a unique point of view. But in order to do that, per your point, you're somebody who needs to be, it can't be in this high-paced world where we're taking in billions of bits of information every day, on our phones, emails, phone call, whatever it is, just out
away from it. You need time away
you
from it.
You need to get away from it. Exactly. So you can really journal about things and go, well, what do I feel about this? What does it make me think about? What else does it remind me of? I think that space is super important. Yeah.
I think so too. This is a simple one, but I think this is right. What is everyone else going to do? So we were using this as an example.
Oh yeah, this is a really good example.
And it was a little yesterday. So I'll work with actors on that We Audition platform, quite a bit now actually, and I enjoy it. But there was one guy, good actor, always so much. Oh my God, Mike, some of these people.
They're really bad. Huh?
Oh my God! Sometimes I'll block people on there just because they're that bad. I can't.
Wow.
Even I'm like, I can't spend time doing that. I know. So it's so mean, but I'm just being honest with you. Sometimes. Anyway.
Sure.
So this guy, the scene was him. It says at the top, he's in a locker room and he's shaving. It says it.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't filming it actually until a few days, and he was just like, let's I just want to work it out. I want to get clarity like what my point of view is. And again, he's a good actor. And we were talking about it, and he was like, what should I do? And we were like, everybody's gonna shave. Literally everybody is gonna, because it's easy. It's easy and it's a good taping thing to do. So we're like, well, let's not shave. Let's have you come in with a towel. Maybe you take the towel off and you're putting your stuff in your bag and you put on another shirt and you're still kind of giving them the thing, but I said you turn around at some point and you're acting from the back, like you're facing, it's kind of a long scene,
sure.
Like you really just,
and look, the risk he runs is that somebody's going to watch that and be like, he's not fucking shaving. That's not what the scene, that's not quote what the scene is.
Remember the Stephen Meyer story about?
Oh yeah, great story. Yeah.
He filmed a guest star audition in the mountains, and he was skiing, and so he filmed it outside because it kind of worked for the scene. He was like against a wall with like the mountains in the background, and his reps were like, "Stephen, please do this again. Please do this again." And he was like, "No, send it in. Like that's what I want." And they were like, "Please, like just go inside." And he was like, "I want you to send it in." And he sent it in, and he booked it. And then the feedback they got was, "We loved his tape," because no one's doing that. No one was doing that. So the point is, what's the point? Well, this question of what is
exactly,
everyone else going to
and
do,
so this,
and how do you? Yeah,
exactly, and so like, yeah, this is the thing, right? Of like, that guy literally just imagining what everybody else is going to do, and just choosing to be different. Just countering that is bold, right? And so that's, now look, I'm not saying that you be different for the sake of being different, but yes, I am saying that kind of to an extent. Like, what other options do you have? Like, because That's the thing. People are watching. I don't give a shit what anybody says. They know in 3 seconds, 5 seconds, especially when you talk about tape, they know in 5 seconds what the deal is, and whether or not you're really in consideration or not.
Yes.
So it's like sometimes just being that different is going to just make them stop and watch. Yeah. And it's, it's sad because it's, quote, not about the work, but, it's like.
Well, this goes back, if I may, this is kind of our marketing funnel episode, right, too, in some ways, because it's kind of a different conversation. Listen, it's all unique nuance and strategies here. I think this is a good. Okay, 2 more points, and then we'll let you mofos go. But how else you could show up as your bold self is just simply expressing your opinion more.
100%.
And you sort of said this. You sort of said this in terms of, being someone who might just play. I mean, I can't stand that. But I get it, and I think it's a smart. Because I love it. Which is basically if somebody says, don't be afraid to engage people on a like if you say something, if I say something, basically what we're saying in this moment is don't be afraid if you don't understand it or if you don't necessarily entirely agree with it. Don't be afraid to ask people to clarify. Don't be afraid to ask people, what do you really mean by that? Well, let's go in. You're saying you don't like when people do that to you? No, what I'm saying, I don't like it when people play devil's advocate to play devil's advocate. Because and this is you do this to me, and I'm not being mean, and Michael does this to me too. And I think what I appreciate about it is because I am someone who I think will express strong opinions, and I think sometimes it's kind of like, okay, well, what about this? And I get it.
I hate it when people do it to me too. Nobody likes when people do that to them. I hate it too.
Because sometimes for me, I'm like, it's actually like not what I need in the moment. I actually don't mind it. But in the moment, sometimes all I'm looking for, and what I actually think I do a very good job of, is being like, yes, no, yes. Because sometimes that's what people want to hear. And then so that's when I get annoyed about the devil's advocate thing. Because I'm like, I just don't want to. I'm not in an emotional place to be reasonable right now, depending on what it is. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure. No, it's something that I do a lot to people because that's just where my mind. Because I think that's genuinely where my mind goes, and I feel like that's what I need more than anything is somebody to actually kind of stop me and go like, well, we'll explain it. Because that's terrifying, right? That's a risk. That's bold. When somebody calls you out and makes you sort of say like, well, what about that? That's a very bold choice because nobody likes it when that happens to them. But the reason why I think it is important and to even again practice it in your head, even if somebody is saying something you agree with, to sort of practice the devil's advocate piece of it in your head. Again, being bold means taking risk. I think that inherent in a risk is danger. I think inherent in a risk is danger and exposing yourself in a moment, right? So this is why sort of devil's advocacy, even if it's not out loud, is important, is because you're not just being carried away into somebody else's storm. You are, standing on your own feet and really thinking these things through, if that makes sense. So
it does. No, and that's why, period. So
okay.
We hope this has provided good food for thought for you all. Comfort food performances.
I'll go first.
Okay, great.
So Nicholas made me watch last night a movie called The Good Son. Have you ever seen this movie?
One of my favorite movies.
Are you serious?
Oh, I love Macaulay Culkin in that movie.
Oh, that movie like got terrible reviews when it came out. That's a great fucking movie.
It used to be that movie.
It used to be one of our favorite movies when we were younger, and we were watching it last night again. And it's first off, It's just
that's hilarious.
beautiful.
I love that. I love that Nicholas is like, okay, we've got Dumbo or The Good Son.
Well, when he's bad, those are the verbal stimmies. He's like, "Don't fuck with me," or he's like, or he says like the lines from that movie. That's like when he's being very bad. That's the lines he takes. But yes,
that's crazy.
no, he'll say,
"That's great. I love it.
Well,
I love it. I love it."
No, that's the movie he takes the verbal stimmies from. I mean, I would say Macaulay, but Elijah Wood too. I mean, Elijah Wood in that
really
movie,
good.
12-year-old
really
Elijah Wood is giving
okay, but
a
Macaulay
performance.
Culkin. But Macaulay Culkin,
No, he's excellent in it
because he's playing. That's very hard to play for. I mean, for a young person to understand the depths of that sociopathy. He
does it. I will lift up both of them, because yes, even watching it yesterday, I'm like, this is like a grown man. Like it's giving it's giving truly like a very scary grown man, and it's 12-year-old Macaulay Culkin.
And by the way, that's a horror film to me.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's a psychological thriller.
It's a great fucking movie. It is a great movie.
Well, I'll tell you what's not a great movie. Blink Twice, starring Channing Tatum. It's quite bad. However, there's a performance in there that's really good, surprising, and by someone I haven't seen in years. And it's Gina Davis. Gina Davis in Blink Twice is playing this bumble. Basically,
Channing is that Tatum, the magic one? No. Blink Twice is the
kind of
one
like
that just came
Epstein.
out. Yeah, it just came out. It really wasn't good, huh?
No,
it was not a good movie.
Not good. But Gina Davis plays sort of like a bumbling Ghislaine Maxwell. Think of it that way, and is super interesting and odd and funny and out of place in a very bad movie. But she's really, really good. So go.
Let me ask you a question about this really quick. Sorry to go here. It's based on Jeffrey Epstein.
I don't know, but
it's like adults. But it's like adults.
Oh yeah,
it's like he's.
Well, it's the story of a bunch of women, young women, but not young women.
Yeah, they're like in their 20s.
Yeah, who
and they're hot.
Who are basically convinced to go to this island.
Here's my problem with that. Just even in theory, it's like, just do it. Why are you so afraid to do the fucking movie? It's like, this is why people are so fucking suspicious of Hollywood. Why can't you just make the movie of what like happened? Why does it have to be sort of like, ooh, we're calling because it's zeitgeisty, but we're not actually going to tell like.
Well, here's what I'll say. And when you watch Elephant, which you should watch, here's why I think it would change it. Depending on the subject matter, right? So in Elephant's instance, or essentially a retelling of Columbine. I want to make this point because I think it will speak to directly what you're saying. There was, I told you, a very removed quality of all of the storylines of what was happening in the school before the shooting.
Right.
And I think it was odd, like almost bad acting. Like, hey Sandy, do you want? I almost felt like a bad
like a
educational
lynch.
video.
Or like almost Lynchian in some ways.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I think Lynchian is probably a better way to consider it. But what the value of that was, I don't think you could build a storyline where you really invest and knowing where the film was going. So it was kind of like really artistically done. If you were to make Blink Twice essentially about the of children, that becomes a very different
movie. Sure, it's not like a fun. That was like a fun, like Zoe Kravitz directed that.
Exactly.
Right? That's like a fun. That was like sort of like a fun summer Channing Tatum time,
low key.
But who's actually, believe it or not, who wrote a Jeffrey Epstein movie, who's doing very well right now and it's moving along quickly. Max Hunter, not Max Hunter. Sorry, Max Halper. Max Halper wrote a script that's moving along that is like an Epstein movie, basically. But it's not. Anyway, whatever. So great, weird note to end on. Goodbye.
Goodbye, all.
Okay.